you. Thanks, Barbara. Problem with the language, there is simultaneous translation. Si alguien tiene algún problema de conseguir la sesión en inglés, pues hay traducción simultánea. Okay, now as Barbara was saying, cities face grand challenges. We as society face grand challenges, but they are reflected mostly in the cities that require solutions of common good problems characterized by high levels of complexity and little knowledge on even the nature of the solutions. Now, to face these challenges, we need sophisticated public-private partnerships, which are more of the form of innovation ecosystems, that really incorporate a lot of different partners, and the area of analysis is not just the city of Barcelona, but is the greater metropolitan area or even the metropolitan region. So we really have a problem or an issue of understanding what are the governance elements that can make us deal with this complexity and face these choices. But of course, into finding the solutions and the mechanisms, entering in this debate, debate that we many times have in different places, we believe is very important that it is database, that we should have this debate, because of course there are different approaches. We don't have to agree about everything, but based in data, and that's a little bit the objective of the session of today. Before we organize these other sessions, workshops, more focus in what is the objective of this thing, which is this development of the right governance for the objective of this Barcelona, that I think that when we think about it and about their future, we do have already quite an agreement. We know what we have to do. Of course, the strategies can always be improved, but we have to deal about how we do this thing and reach this thing. And as I say, the starting point is this element of data. So I'm not going to take more time. Then later on into the panel, we'll connect with this thing. But first, we are going to be listening to Ramon Gras, that will present to us this science-focused methodology and the data of Barcelona that gets out of this thing. He's an urban innovation researcher at the Harvard University, co-founder of Aretian Urban Analytics and Design, and I think he's well known for most of you here in Barcelona, and we appreciate, and I want to thank, before giving him the word, this collaboration, that we hope this is just the beginning of a collaboration with you and your organization for the good of Barcelona. Ramon?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure being here at the IESE Business School in Barcelona, my city, and joining you all, invited by IESE Business School and the Center PPP for Cities and Sustainable Development, and also the City of Barcelona, the City Council, the City Government, as Barbara expressed earlier on. I would very much appreciate, especially not only the Secretary General Jaume Armengou and Joan-Enric Ricard, their generosity, and their fantastic team, Alicia Plana, Federico Grossi, and Stefania, and the whole team. So I'm delighted to be sharing here some references of our work at the Retian in the realm of city science, urban design, and economic development, and specifically addressing the challenges that the Barcelona metropolitan region is facing these days, which are remarkable and are complex and are not easy to solve. As Professor Jean-Enrique Ricard was mentioning a moment ago, there's this major challenge, and one of the big problems that we do experience in the Barcelona metropolitan region is that the city is crowded with talented people, with a fantastic tradition of social organization and collaboration, economic dynamism, cultural vibrancy. However, in recent decades, for complex historical reasons, there's been some stagnancy being experienced in terms of the economic development opportunities, the urban development vision, and so forth. And that, on the one hand, obviously it creates in the short term some limitations for the quality of life of citizens, but on the other side, we should also mention that it provides an amazing opportunity, because that stagnation of the vision that was shaped during the transition times in the 1970s can be now overcome by shaping a new vision for the coming decades for the city and the broader metropolitan region. So some of the critical questions that we can address, right, is how can we tackle the complex problems facing society? How can we tackle the complex problems facing the Barcelona metropolitan region? That's not an easy question to answer, but it's critical, because otherwise what we experience these days is a number of problems with the limitation and scarcity in terms of access to housing opportunities and affordable housing in particular. There's limitations in terms of the economic opportunities and employment opportunities for the youth especially, but for the broader population as well. There's issues related with income levels that have been stagnant for 20 years. And all of these problems, it would be a major irresponsibility to try to attribute that to a specific government or agency or political party. That would be banal, and that would not be fair. That's been basically a societal issue that needs to be addressed at that scale and with the collaboration of everybody, the public administration, the private sector, social organizations, all together, as Professor Jean-Enrique Ricard was mentioning. That's the purpose of his center, the PPP for Cities at the IESE Business School. Now, how can these PPP projects contribute to shape this new vision? That's a fundamental question to answer, because there's going to be the need, the demand for this active collaboration, articulate collaboration between all these public and private agencies if we really want to solve the problem. So first of all, environmental sustainability, the urban design vision. What should be the urban development vision for the 5 million citizen urban metropolis? That's quite unclear at the moment. Although there's been some advances, because as Barbara mentioned a moment ago, recently there's been the PDU, the legal framework for urban design that's been recently approved. The idea is that it will start being active very, very soon, and that will create the new flexible framework to shape this economic development and urban development opportunities. A second critical question is, how can we increase the quality of life of citizens through urban development? How can we link urban and economic development together? Here you see the Badalona and Sant Adrià de Besòs, Tres Xemeneies area, which is one of the most promising for the near future. And the third critical question is the governance piece, right? How can we coordinate all these efforts? And how can we galvanize the knowledge economy to create distributed prosperity for all citizens and visitors alike? The area that you observe is in Esplugues de Llobregat, very close to Barcelona, and it's one of the most promising areas that will be developed in the coming years in the Barcelona area. So in order to answer those questions, we should start by considering that if we integrate in city science methodologies, if we understand urbanism as both an art and a science, as a fruitful collaboration between creativity, rigor, and scientific approaches, that can help us unlock this problem and envision potential solutions that could give way for a better future in the short term. A couple of hints regarding the current diagnostic of the area, and then we will dive into the deeper aspects. Regarding the urban design, as we said, recently there's been the PDU approved that creates a flexible framework, although we need to mention that for the last few years, multiple years, 10 or 15 years, we've experienced remarkable stagnancy in terms of the framework, because the previous plan was obviously the 1976 general plan for the metropolitan area, which did a great deal of good things for the Barcelona development in terms of the 3 rondas and the openness to the coastal facade and all of that, but it became obviously over time obsolete. Another point that we need to mention is that there's a scarce affordable housing opportunities and uneven access to services throughout the metropolitan area. That's obviously an undesirable situation that we need to overcome. In terms of the economic development, we need to mention that there's also a partially stagnant manufacturing scene. We need to mention that, roughly speaking, 50% of the industries are stagnant and 20% of them are at risk. So that poses some questions for the forthcoming future. And there's other problems associated, for example, with the geographic atomization of companies that makes it difficult to have long value chains in the industrial clusters and parks that we host in the area. And in terms of the knowledge economy, there's been a vibrant environment being grown and built over the last 10 or 15 years, but maybe the qualities of it sometimes are not the most ideal ones. So we will present today some ideas to really help shape a high quality innovation ecosystem. Sometimes the startup ecosystem in the Barcelona area resembles that of developing countries, and that's obviously not a desirable outcome. So we should help overcome this vision and shape a new one. So how can we do that? How can we really come up with a scientific diagnostic on the one hand, and with a rigorous and creative vision approach for the future, in order for us to have a more prosperous, more egalitarian and higher quality of life for all citizens in the Barcelona area. I will present a brief introduction to city science. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you, for some of you that may be a bit more a new approach, but that may help shape the framework of how we work at Harvard and Aretian, and then we'll go deeper into the Barcelona problems and how we can solve them, right? So first of all, paying tribute to the references and masters and the people that we admire. As you know, Professor Jeffrey West from the Santa Fe Institute in Santa Fe, New Mexico in the United States. Their team, which is a fantastic research team composed of a very diverse set of backgrounds in mathematics, applied physics, engineering, urbanism, and many others, data science, artificial intelligence. They've made a remarkable contribution since the 1980s to the foundations of city science. As you know, the founder of the science of urbanism was Ildefons Cerdà from Centelles, Osona, Catalunya. He did a major contribution through his general theory of urbanization and through the expansion plan for Barcelona that increased by tenfold the population of the city from 100,000 people to 1 million people within less than a century, and that's an admirable, including a number of key new ideas that he coined, new concepts, and a more scientific and rigorous approach to urbanism. So, but for a number of decades, that approach was a bit underdeveloped, but the team at the Santa Fe Institute in the United States made a remarkable contribution in that realm. One of the most insightful, surprising insights that they learned and the discoveries was the very curious, somewhat funny as well, exact mathematical analogy between the realm of mammals and animals and the realm of cities. So that's critical, because that means that we can understand there's a perfect analogy between the complex systems in nature created by God and the complex systems of cities and urbanism created by men, by mankind, by people, men, women. But cities, as imperfect as they are, they present multiple qualities, and by means of complex systems and network theory, we can really understand them much better and shape a proper strategy. So they found this perfect mathematical analogy that every time when they sort the animals by mass in kilograms, every time they double the mass, what they get is slower heartbeats, higher life expectancy, and more resilient capabilities to overcome the nature and environmental challenges and threats. What that means is that there's a mathematical relationship between, in this case, kilograms in terms of the size and the sophistication and complexity of these animals at the biological level. Obviously, us as people, who are also part of this network, as you see, but we also have some spiritual qualities that animals obviously don't have, right? But that creates a number of interesting observations, which are very, very revealing, and they're global, they're valid worldwide. On the one hand, the economies of scale associated with the sublinear growth of animals, right? And that creates an analogy with the sublinear economies of scale with cities. Every time we increase a city by twice as much in terms of the population, on average, we observe a 15% of savings in terms of the architecture, civil engineering, urban design materials that we need to use to shape the cities materially, right? That also has some other superlinear implications in terms of especially the more spiritual relationships between people. What that means is that every time we increase the population size by twice as much, as a global effect, we observe that there's a 15% increase of diversity of industries, diversity of employment opportunities, diversity of economic sectors and knowledge areas, presence of the knowledge economy, new creators, new innovators, research and development patents, and so forth. So that creates a major surplus that explains to a large extent why people migrate from smaller towns to bigger cities. Now, those advances are really impressive, but they are applied primarily at the city level, at the aggregate level. Our contribution at the Retian Urban Analytics and Design and at the Harvard City Science and Urban Design team has been to territorize those improvements. And in this case, we've done it by modeling those complex systems at 3 levels. The network of talent, of individual people collaborating in concert, the network of industries and services, and finally, the network of urban design, architecture, and civil engineering and infrastructure that provide the physical support for our urban, personal, and economic development. Now, what we observe is that the overwhelming majority of those networks around the world are mediocre, are medium to low quality. That's the reason of our name. Arete comes from ancient Greek, is to increase a mediocre system, transform it deeply by means of complex systems understanding, combining traditional design with advanced mathematics and artificial intelligence modeling to shape this evolution from a mediocre system into a highly sophisticated one. And then we need a number of critical ingredients and dynamics to make it happen. Obviously, location is very relevant. The real estate people, they talk about location, 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 but that's insufficient. Accessibility and mobility is a critical challenge that needs to be addressed. If we cannot provide a proper intermodal transportation system for people and goods, it's going to be really hard to really galvanize those areas. The urban design has immense implications. We will discuss some of them today before we dive into the Barcelona case, et cetera, until we have a proper merit-based economic system. What we've learned by means of city science is that there are 10 main types of cities around the world, including the small world cities, linear cities, radial cities, monumental cities, fractal cities, grid or reticular cities, et cetera, that we will discuss in a minute. Why is that relevant? Because each of these cities presents specific characteristics and features that are reverberate and have lasting impact in the quality of life of citizens. How we do measure them? We decompose these systems, which can be understood as a complex and dynamic system, into their multiple components and parts, and we understand how they operate. On the one hand, the 2-dimension urban topology, streets, street networks, boulevards, avenues, highways, the 3-dimensional architectural features of spatial spaces and buildings, and finally the global indicators such as fractality, which is harmony, or entropy, which is order or liberty. In terms of that, we then apply that to multiple cities. We'll just present a couple of examples to illustrate the methodology, and then we'll dive deeper into the Barcelona area in a minute. But here you have, for example, the cities of Frankfurt and Moscow. If you had to compare them with traditional means, it would be really hard. But then we can decompose it into the 2-dimensional, bidimensional structure of avenues, streets, boulevards, and the multiple walkways and pedestrian streets. The same for Moscow, as you immediately see. Central Frankfurt resembles small world network, whereas Moscow presents a more radial concentric system of 9 concentric rings. Then we evaluate the architectural features, which are obviously remarkably different for Frankfurt and Moscow. What is the shape of the building? What is the form of the building? What is the space programming of the building? What is the physical proximity between economic activities? How do people collaborate or not collaborate so much? This is fundamental. And then we create a number of indicators worldwide that then we can compare in equal terms, contrast, and evaluate and extract global lessons that can have lasting implications for better urban design, better economic development strategies, mobility, energy efficiency, among others. That can be applied worldwide. This is an example from Osaka in Japan, where you see the topology, the morphology, the economic activity and amenities, and finally some sample indicators. This is just to illustrate that this potential allows us to compare in an apples-to-apples manner, in an egalitarian manner, these cities with common denominators. Therefore, those comparisons are valuable worldwide, and we can extract global lessons. And if that's the case for Osaka in Japan, we can also apply it to any other city, including Hong Kong for that matter, for that purpose, in China. So then the learnings that we extract are equivalent to those of Professors Jeffrey West, Luis Betancourt, and their team. They're global, universal, therefore scientific, and very useful to address those problems. Now, when we evaluate cities from around the world, here you see a few ones from Europe, the US, Latin America, Asia, the Pacific area, anywhere, Africa, the Middle East, multiple areas around the world. Obviously, the variance of the urban design, the architectural features is remarkable. Now, it's critical to group this into ontological characteristics that we can measure and compare and see what are the best practices. A critical question. Now, once we evaluate that in a scientific way, how can we shape that vision? So the answer lies in look. And you may think, which look, right? Is it Luke Skywalker or maybe the other look, the classical one? So maybe both, right? Who knows? Why is that relevant? Because we did a mathematical demonstration of the parable of the talents, which is obviously in 2 of the 4 canonic Gospels. And that has been published as a scientific paper by an index journal, so it's not a boutade or a provocation. We did the mathematical, we demonstrated mathematically the parable of the talents. You may remember the story of a master that was allocating different resources among the employees. And then it was a bit counterintuitive because Christianism, which is a deeply egalitarian religion and deeply spiritual religion, it seems that it's saying something which is counterintuitive, that the ones that they give the most, they produce the most in a power law exponential way. That's very, very impressive, and a bit confusing and hard to understand for many people. But the idea here is that whatever gifts or talents were being given, the best outcome is when we use them to their fullest. And that's unfortunately very difficult to do. Why? Because the overwhelming majority of systems around the world are oligarchic, which it means is that they create a reduced group of people, an oligarchy, that controls the majority of the resource of power, and then other groups are being excluded from decision-making processes very often. And what we try to do, among other things, is to create more porous systems that creates a merit-based system, which is on the one hand egalitarian, that creates opportunities for everybody, especially the more vulnerable people, so they're protected, and also opportunities for the brightest and more brilliant people. You can see here a comparison. The log normal structure is the typical one, which is concentrating in this aura mediocritas, the mediocrity of business as usual systems. What we are trying to achieve is a scale-free, fractal, high-quality harmonic polycentrism system, characterized by, on the one hand, distributed networks which are egalitarian, and on the other, concentrated nodes that create surplus, right? Egalitarian and freedom to create value and to distribute it. The area under the curve of the scale-free system, as you see, is much, much larger. Now, why is that relevant? Well, whether it's one look or the other, or maybe both, one thing that I'm sure we'll all agree is that Jabba the Hutt was a son of a bitch, evil and disgusting character, and the little creature that went with him was an evil and stupid goon that was not helpful at all. So I'm sure that we will all agree on that. So a strategy that's critical here is to shape, on the one hand, a fractal system, fractal three-dimensional system for Barcelona, that's characterized, among other things, to strategically locate innovation districts in critical areas to increase dramatically the quality of the urban design, of economic development, and of the knowledge economy systems to increase the performance of them. We've evaluated multiple innovation districts around the world through our city science methodology, 50 of them in the United States, 55 in Europe, 20 in Latin America, and multiple in other countries in Asia, Middle East, and other parts of the world, including Africa and other parts. And what we've seen when we evaluate these urban environments around the world is that there are certain features that are critical, right? So here is just the map of the ALDAs that we publish. It's open access. If some of you want to review them in detail, you are more than welcome to download the report through our website. It's totally for free. And we present some of the insights as well as the comparison across the board for 50 innovation districts. That's critical because what we observe is that when the urban design qualities are high quality, when the smart specialization strategies are aligned between the multiple sectors, research, applied transfer innovation, startups, and the vertical chains from industry. And finally, when the knowledge economy system is being shaped with a network of physical places, third places that create the synergies, those areas thrive and become very, very successful. You have some examples here from California, New York, North Carolina, and other parts of the United States that we've measured quantitatively, and also the qualities of them, right? So what we'll learn by evaluating these multiple innovation districts is that there are causal mechanisms which are not trivial, not easy to see, but are fundamental, and they have strong territorial urban implications. In other words, when we shape a specific urban innovation ecosystem in an area, that we can call innovation intensity, the percentage of people working in knowledge-intensive activities, that tends to create, in time, lasting effects through innovation performance, new products, new services, patents, creations, etc., which in its turn tends to create innovation impact. High quality employment opportunities, well-paid employment opportunities, dramatically increased business revenue, etc., etc. Can we measure that? Yes. We did it. We did it for 270,000 building group observations across the United States, the whole country. And what we observe is that this data-driven analysis of the measurement systems of the success of innovation allows us not only to understand which areas are the most successful ones, but also why. What are the causal mechanisms, right? So what we observe is that when they double the effort of innovation and they increase the density, the physical proximity, they tend to produce 4 times more innovation per capita, 16 times more knowledge-intensive employment opportunities per resident, and 25 times more revenue per unit of resident. Therefore, the multiplying effects that we described earlier on are really dramatic, really impressive, and we want to achieve them. What we can then do is model the networks of innovation. This is one network from the Americas. You see every node is a person, every color is a team, how they collaborate with one another. The closer they are, the more they collaborate. And what we immediately see is that there's some causal mechanism between the people that make the most effort and the results that they get. We can aggregate that at the research group level or innovation level, and that presents a high level of correlation and causation with the types of results that we get as a society in terms of the average income of an area, the economic dynamism, the diversification and sophistication of the industries, and so forth. We've decomposed those 3 phases in 7 phases to be able to measure them quantitatively, so we can see how many researchers, how do they collaborate with one another, to what extent they're being able, by means of physical third places like innovation hubs, technology transfer centers, applied research labs, startup incubators and accelerators, they can collaborate in a fruitful and dynamic environment, and therefore help cross this bridge from the original abstract idea to the final tangible, physical or intangible digital solution. A couple of references: network of talent. We can measure those geospatial effects. This is the case of Barcelona. You immediately see in blue, the most dynamic areas are in Eixample, designed by Sardà, in the 22 Arroba, Miquel Barceló and other people here did major contributions there, and as well as Alta Diagonal area and the port area for logistics reasons. It creates lasting causal effects, and it creates an innovation impact. The graphics are slightly different, but quite similar. That means that there's a causal relationship there between the decisions we make and the results we get 15 years down the road. Is that something specific to Barcelona or to the Catalans? No. We observe that in Stockholm, in Sweden, in Scandinavia. We observe that in Chicago, in Illinois, in the Great Lakes states, in the Midwest area in the United States. We can observe that in Seattle, in Washington, in the Northwest, in the Northwest of the United States, an urban area that's been very dynamic in recent years, as you know, similar to Austin and others. And we observe that for that purpose in New York, Berlin, Marseille, Adelaide, Boston, anywhere. It's a global, universal causal mechanism between the decisions we make as urban designers, economic development leaders, thought leaders, and investors, and the city government leading that or coordinating those efforts, and the results we get as a society. Then we can measure the impact that that has in terms of the quality of life of citizens worldwide, and we observe very uneven results. You see the radial concentric system of Paris, it creates high quality of life at the center, lower quality the farther we are from the center. The area influenced by Sardà is high quality, the other areas are much lower, unfortunately. Sao Paulo is a bit of a disaster of a mess. People are very friendly and very sexy and very nice, but from an urban design perspective, it's a bit of a disaster. So we can learn and measure that and understand that. In terms of network of industries, we can, in a data-driven way, evaluate out of the 775 industries worldwide, how many of them are activated, right? In blue, we observe automobile, electronics, industrial products, In purple, we observe chemicals, pharmaceutical products, plastics and polymers. In green, not so much these days, there's the textiles, fashion and apparel industry. In yellow and brown, we have the agricultural sectors and food industries, etc., etc., etc. Here we observe the case of Las Españas, Spain. We can do the same for Catalonia, we can do the same for Barcelona, and we can do the same for the multiple municipalities and veguerías and comarcas around Catalonia in this case. As you observe, Pakistan is very different, mostly focused on textile industries and agricultural products, right? It's a much less diverse and less sophisticated overall. But Germany is more diverse and more sophisticated. So by means of evaluating these complex systems, we can learn which are the industries that present a true comparative advantage worldwide and how we can take advantage of that to help increase peaks of quality in terms of the economic development. One of our contributions has been to take that system and territorialize it. In Catalonia, we have, roughly speaking, 950 municipalities. Obviously, the largest being Barcelona with 1.6 million, but we can tailor that analysis to understand which are the 300 and so industries that present a global comparative advantage in Barcelona and why, which are the ones in Badalona, the ones in Terrassa, the ones in Sabadell, the ones in Tarragona, in Girona, in Reus, in Olot, in Lleida, anywhere. And then we can give them names and surnames and be very, very precise with economic activities where we're really good at today, and also create scenarios for the future by means of artificial intelligence simulations, deeply understanding the knowledge systems that are underlying in society to shape that. And finally, a couple of hints regarding urban design. As we've said, we've evaluated 10 typologies of urban design. What we've seen is that there's a perfect analogy between city types and network types, right? We have a small world network, small world city. We have a linear network, linear city. We have a tree network, a garden city. We have a grid network, a reticular city, etc., etc. And that has not only aesthetic implications in terms of the beauty, but also functional and mathematical implications in terms of the impact of how we relate with one another, how we work with one another. A few examples from small world networks in Bruges, in Belgium, in Moscow, in Russia, for the case of radial systems, but there's also Dubai, Paris, Milano, Shanghai, and others. We have Rome, monumental cities like Washington, D.C., parts of Madrid, Brasilia, and others. Ottawa, Canberra, which is a very good example of a garden city, but there's many other examples in Anglo-Saxon countries and also in continental Europe. And reticular cities like New York City, Chicago, downtown San Francisco, Philadelphia, among others. And fractal cities like the expansion plan for Barcelona, other cities in La Plata in Argentina, or the expansion in Boston, among others. When we learn that, there are two critical aspects to be considered here, the qualitative and the quantitative, to shape the urban design vision. On the one hand, every time we double the density of an urban environment, as long as we don't get to the optimal range for that city, we get remarkable economies of scale in the order of 19%. That means that medium high density levels are the optimal ones, as long as we do not cross the threshold of the optimal range for that degree of population. But more important than quantity is quality. Every time we double urban design fractality, architectural fractality, connectivity between people, physical proximity, qualities of aesthetic and functional qualities of architectural spaces, we observe a 31% worldwide global superlinear increase in efficiency and quality. This is very important. It means that quantity and quality are both relevant, but quality is overall more relevant. Or as Mr. Pirelli said, power without control is useless, right? Analyze cities. Can we prove that mathematically? Yes, we can. We compare then many cities in a log-log scale, and we observe that the fractal systems are on average 3.5 times more efficient than the radial systems, such as the ones in Paris, in Dubai, and other countries and cities around the world, right? Obviously, Barcelona is composed of multiple things, 45% fractal, 55% of other systems, monumental in the scores, small world network in La Ciutat Vella, etc., etc. But that part, which is half of the city, is very, very important, and it raises the level of the quality overall for the city. Sao Paulo is a bit of a disaster. These are the unfortunate notes down below, unfortunately. And Stockholm is a relatively medium high quality. Thank God for them. That's good for them. Then we can compare global cities worldwide. Here we have represented 500 million people from around the world, Asia, Europe, Latin America, United States, the Americas in general. And you see that these trends are superlinear and can be measured worldwide, and we can understand what are the target values. We know now that a system that has more than 0.7 in a standardized way from urban design fractality, it tends to present high quality architectural spaces and connectivity for urban design. So fractality is like being a good person, or sexiness. The more, the better. The more, the better. Entropy, however, is different. Is regularity or liberty. We want a combination of liberty and some efficiency. Intermediate levels of entropy are the optimal ones overall. And here are a few examples in architecture that we can see in multiple buildings around the world, public office buildings or churches and all types of buildings that present these fractal shapes that replicate themselves at multiple scales that we can observe in nature, we can observe in art, we can observe in architecture, we can observe in multiple human creations as well, and we intuitively associated them with beauty and with the spatial places, right? This is the expansion plan for Boston, which has a remarkably fractal composition developed more or less around the time of the expansion of Barcelona. Now, this is critical because then we can shape increasing fractality and the other systems and apply those learnings for Barcelona, because we know that we can then establish gradients. For example, the case of Osaka is remarkably less fractal than New York City, etc., etc., etc. We can compare all the cities worldwide at the high level of precision of units of 1,000 people, and that can help shape urban design, architectural space, combining more traditional design capabilities and systems with other considerations. Now, finally, getting into the Barcelona considerations. What that means is that if we can shape a fractal urban design vision in a three-dimensional manner for the whole metropolitan region of 5 million, if we can shape a smart urban development strategy and knowledge economy, we can really turn the tide of the current situation of stagnancy for the last 20 years and be more dynamic and be one of the world-class talent, attraction, retention, and development centers, one of the foremost in the world. This is the current status. And on top of that fractal three-dimensional vision for the 5 million and 125 municipalities of the metro region, we can strategically locate 5 innovation districts, a network of 5 innovation districts that could have anywhere between 25 and 35 or 40,000 employment opportunities in the near future, of which 50% of them could be obviously knowledge intensive, and that would create these multiplying effects that we mentioned earlier on. How can we shape that? Obviously, the city has been developed in multiple historical phases, but there's these areas, and I believe that later on, Maria Galindo and Miquel Barceló and Professor Andreu Mascolell and Robert Gili and Jean-Enric Ricard will discuss this at length and in depth. But we have some industrial parks that are remarkably obsolete these days, especially the ones developed during the dictatorship, that have become obsolete in terms of their low quality urban design spaces. We're talking about, for example, the Bon Pastor area. We have 5 industrial clusters which are totally obsolete, only 8,000 people working in this area, very low innovation intensity, 21%. If we're considering that an innovation district should have 35 to 40,000 innovation intensity at least to be a properly innovation district, and we're only 22 or 21, we're really far away from that. 8,000 people, this area has the capacity by means of city science to host 32, 34,000 people in the future. So we should increase remarkably twice as much, so 4 times more the levels of density, and we should shape the space programming and the urban design and the zoning in a way that that can be achieved. Nearby, we have the Diagonal Mar in 22 Arroba East and the Badalona and the Three Chimneys. And on the other side, we have the Esplugas corridor next to Bonanova in Pedralbes, as well as the Port Airport Zona Franca area that should be very promising for the coming years. Then we can start evaluating the industries and companies operating in those spaces and understand what's going on. You see that immediately it's a mess, right? The 5 industrial clusters that were developed in this area, they're a total mess. Out of the 750 companies operating right now, only 100 of them are innovative or partially innovative, and the majority of them have less than 10 employees. So there's mostly SMEs, PYMEs, small companies and medium companies. Therefore, and there's a remarkable space atomization. The way they are right now, they're too widespread, too distributed, therefore it's impossible to constitute an innovation ecosystem unless we really redesign the whole environment. The city government of Barcelona, departments of urbanism and economic development have been actively contributing to this, and they're leading the efforts to transform the urban design, and we contributed in this project as well. So I'll present some of the ideas of the master plan that we developed with the city of Barcelona. These are the current parcels. As you see, they're very atomized, very inefficient, very strangely shaped. And out of this network system of research, innovation, startups, etc., you see that the first 4 phases of the knowledge creation and diffusion are almost negligible at the moment. What we have is 100 innovative companies, 650 which are regular supporting companies. What we want is the desirable future 20 years down the road, where we have a proper ecosystem with research, applied transfer, innovation, leading technology firms. So this is the current status from a network perspective. This is what we want to have, a proper ecosystem. There's a vast difference between having a few companies and having a proper innovation ecosystem. That's the vision that we shape. The size note is basically the quantity of innovation employment. The color is the type of activity. And these are what we observe is that we observe that there are 1,089 theoretical research fields in the 10 universities, public and private, operating in the area, UPC, Barcelona Tech, UB, and others. We've evaluated them all through network systems approach. Of them, we'll learn that there's 325, broadly speaking, applied research sectors that present potential synergies with the industry, and they can be grouped in 11 knowledge domains, of which 5 of them should be supported in this area. So this is the area that we are proposing to regenerate. There's the master plan that we developed with the city of Barcelona, working very closely for the last year. And these are the 5 knowledge areas, including urban tech technologies, including robotics and advanced manufacturing, including nanotechnology and advanced materials, and including agri-technology and renewable energy, among others, which are very, very critical industries for the near future to address climate issues. Now, not only the geographic clustering estimate for the different activities, but also it's critical to understand the network logic of them all, how these different hierarchies of knowledge creation, diffusion, and lending will be critical for the success of the urban design of these environments. And then we can estimate and measure the square footage or square meters, the capacity, the building height for each of the different activities that will be hosted for the future regeneration of those districts. How did we get that? We evaluated, as we mentioned, multiple universities, UPC, Institut Germans Trias i Pujol, UOC, Elisava, UB, UPF, etc. And we'll learn a number of things by modeling the 7 phases of innovation. We'll learn that, for example, the strongest base is obviously UPC Barcelona Tech. It's the #1 technology hub in Catalonia. Then in UB, you see that the area of nodes which is more crowded, more connected, more dense, more sophisticated, is the whole area that focuses primarily on medical sciences, pharmaceutical, biotech. So that area is very fruitful for the coming years for Barcelona. We have in Institut Germans Trias i Pujol areas like oncology, research, leukemia, viral disease diagnostics, and others are very promising, etc., etc. So we can identify out of these different universities and research centers which are the most salient research fields that present the most attractive and the most fruitful areas for linking theoretical research with industry and creating these fruitful ecosystems, right? We have urban tech, advanced manufacturing, among others. For the case of UPC, this is the case of Barcelona Tech, IGTP, Can Ruti in Badalona, public health, genetics, oncology, cardiology, viral diseases, leukemia, among others. We have the same for the University of Barcelona, including molecular genetics, neuroscience, cardiology, disease research, etc. Now, the problem is that right now, those connections are broken for the most part. We do have a few sparse knowledge transfer centers, but not enough. We really need to focus way more. We need to increase critical mass, and we need to establish long-lasting relationships between those research areas. And that's what we created. We created highly detailed diagrams that connect for each of the 11 domains of knowledge, the applied research, the theoretical research with the applied research, with the knowledge transfer centers, with the startups, and with the vertical industries for each of the areas. So then we can zoom in. This is the case of, for example, in Bon Pastor for urban tech, and we can do a deeper dive into the different knowledge domains and the subdomains that present the most promising prospects for the near future, and connect it with the businesses, whether large or small, that could be clustering and creating these synergies between theoretical, and that's where the PPP strategies are fundamental and critical. When we cross the information between research and we cross the information with the vertical streams of startups and the well-established industries, there are these 11 domains of knowledge that emerge, and they should be strategically emphasized in different ways. There's 5 of them in Bon Pastor, Bezos area in Barcelona, There's 4 knowledge areas that should be promoted in Badalona, including pharmaceutical and medical. There's 4 knowledge areas that should be promoted in the case of Esplugas and the Alta Diagonal corridor, and there's 3 of them for the logistics hub between the port and the airport that could be strengthened in the coming years. And these are a few summaries for each of the knowledge domains where we can connect the researchers, the innovators, the startup leaders, the business leaders, and the public servants that contribute to coordinate all these efforts. How can we do that? We can create similar to what we did for countries when we presented about Catalonia, Spain, and all the others before. We can apply that at the municipal level. This is the case of Barcelona, and create 4 quadrants. On the x-axis, the quantity, so how strong these industries are. Every node is an industry. And on the y-axis, the level of sophistication. Obviously, we want to be on the upper right-hand side quadrant, and we can generate scenarios for the future to understand which are the knowledge areas that are the most promising ones and how we can get there. Then we can generate 3 smart specialization scenarios for the future: short-term, 2-3 years; mid-term, 5-7 years; long-term, 12 to 15 years, and accompany these institutions, public and private, to shape. And we know that 114 of them really do present very strong prospects to become the success leaders and the most promising knowledge domains for the coming future that we should be supporting in society between public and private administrations by means of public PPP projects. And we can give them specific names and surnames. We know exactly the types of physical products and intangible services that we should be promoting in order to get the level of sophistication and talent development that we deserve as a society, right? Then finally, a couple of architectural considerations towards the end. This is obviously an urban design evaluation of the Barcelona area. One of the most salient things that you observe is that the area designed by Sardà presents a higher quality overall, right? It's a deeper blue. This is not political or anything. It just means, in this case, quality. The blue are the better, the red the worse in this case. And we observe that the Eixample area and the Sant Martí area presents higher quality, but the area of Besòs presents overall medium, low, or low urban design qualities. So these areas could be regenerated in terms of the topology, in terms of the morphology of these architectural buildings, in terms of the levels of entropy, the fractality, by means of these different urban design interventions, and then linking the physical urban design with the activities that should be nurtured in these areas. And then if we have this network of 5 innovation districts, first tier in the immediate surroundings of Barcelona, and then secondary tiers in cities like Viladecans, in cities like Sitges, in cities like Sant Cugat or Sabadell, in cities like Manresa, etc., 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 we can constitute a very powerful network for the coming years to regenerate. Network science allows us also, finally, to also detect the uneven distribution of public mobility transportation systems. We have the bus network, we have the metro underground network, the subway, we have the tramway systems in the areas that are not so well covered, therefore, how we can improve the deployment and the development of those infrastructure design and deployment systems and services so that everybody's covered and everybody has access to those services. And that can also be applied to the cultural, urban and cultural amenities, including libraries, cultural centers, among many others. So that finally, that's the vision. And that could also be developed for other areas, which I will mention very briefly. In the case of Esplugas, it's a very promising area. In this area, this is the bidimensional topology, 3-dimensional morphology of the spaces. And we have this impressive corridor of public and private universities, including La Salle, IESE, Ramon Llull, Blanquerna, Universitat Internacional de Catalunya, IESE here where we are gathered today, ESADE, the competition, but we need to mention them, right? Hopefully that's not a problem, Jaume. I'm not going to be punished, right? Okay. Sant Joan de Déu, especially for pediatrics and medical research for children. And as you know, Hospital Clinic will be transported from Central Eixample to this area. Barcelona meeting Esplugas and close to Hospitalet as well, and University of Barcelona as well. So we can also evaluate the private universities. This is the case of the Ramon Llull Center across the board, and we can identify which are the most salient and the most promising research fields that we should be connecting between applied research and the other domains of knowledge, and what are the specific industries that present a comparative advantage for the case of Esplugas. One of the things that we observe for Esplugas, and also for the case of Badalona for that purpose, is that unfortunately, because this lack of a more coordinated ecosystem, Barcelona proper, the 1.6 million proper city, has been creating a macrocephalia. It has, out of the 1,900 startups around Catalonia, the overwhelming majority, way more than 1,000 are hosted in Barcelona strictly. That, for example, in Hospitalet, we only have like less than 20. In Esplugues, we have around 10. In Badalona, we have around 15. So it should be way more dense, this ecosystem. We can apply the same logic, smart specialization for Esplugues and for Badalona, and obtain how we can envision this urban regeneration, economic regeneration, knowledge economy regeneration of these networks, connecting the dots and establishing a proper physical and intangible ecosystem to make it happen through PPPs. And then finally, on the other side in Badalona, very, very promising, we have the North Campus and the South Campuses close to the Tres Xemeneies. There's multiple industrial parks, and we have obviously the Institut de Germans Trias i Pujol, led by Professor Jordi Barratina, a brilliant researcher who lived for 12 years in Boston. And there's multiple synergies here between heavy vehicle manufacturing, precious metals, textile design, plastics and polymers, and other industries that present remarkable comparative advantage. And again, we can carefully curate the regeneration of the urban fabric in a three-dimensional manner for architectural spaces and urban design environments, and tailor the four main knowledge of fields that should be shaped, promoted, and devoted in this area in the corridor between Badalona, Sant Adrià del Besòs, very close, by the way, to both Diagonal Mar and Barcelona-Besòs Bon Pastor area, right? So we can go in depth in other cases, but these are the industries that present a comparative advantage. We can compare Barcelona and Badalona, see the similarities and the differences, and how we can promote a very, very strong knowledge ecosystem in Badalona for the coming years, which is a very, very promising. We need to say, though, if we do not propel the proper industries, the proper startup sectors, the proper applied research, if we do not connect the dots, chances are we may not observe the multiplying effects being realized. That's why it's so critical to establish a proper ecosystem, as Miquel Barceló and the other speakers, distinguished speakers, will discover today at length. Then we can finally comment, this is the area from an urban design perspective, but we can evaluate those industries in terms of the business revenue they present, in terms of the knowledge proximity, which is a very different macroeconomic analysis, in terms of level of sophistication and complexity of the products and services that they generate, produce, and sell and export, or the global comparative advantage. All of them are relevant in different ways. We want to see how sophisticated we are to increase sophistication. We want to see how strong our knowledge is to increase critical mass. We want to know how revenues are doing to increase the commercial relationships. And we want to know which are the industries with a real comparative advantage to really target specifically the industries that present the most promising prospects for the future. And finally, just a little gift, comparison between Barcelona and Madrid, to mention that data-driven, we're not that bad. We have a more diverse set of industries and intangible services than Madrid. These are the cases of Barcelona. This is Madrid, as you see, in terms of the smart specialization potential. They're mostly focused in 2 or 3 areas. We have it widespread between 9 and 10, so therefore we have a broader base. It's more diverse. They do have other advantages. Maybe their state is not so hostile against them, but they do have. But we do have a more diverse and a more lasting and rich history in terms of economic diversification. And even though Madrid is doing very well in many respects, this is Barcelona and this is Madrid. And we can say that overall, when we compare the smart specialization opportunities for both Barcelona and Madrid, the prospects for Barcelona, if we do the homework properly, are more promising. Because what we observe is that in Barcelona, the degree of concentration of high value added emerging industries, the ones on the top left side that should go to the right by means of increasing quantity and critical mass, is bigger. And Madrid presents more industries like the Big Dot, which is basically focused on traditional fossil fuels energy systems that will be obviously transition in the coming years. Therefore, they do have a problem with that, and we don't have it that big. So therefore, it's going to be easier for us to transition towards the fourth industrial revolution if we integrate harmonically, as we said, a fractal metropolis urban design vision, architectural space design, and urban infrastructure vision for the coming years in a 3-dimensional manner for the 5 million people metropolitan region. A network of world-class innovation districts, 5 of them that we discussed today, and 20 of them in the near areas and smaller cities. Stronger, longer, and stronger and more dense value chains, and higher concentration of physical proximity of companies, both for physical products and intangible services, and a knowledge economy that should be more focused on high value added and creating high quality employment opportunities for the youngsters and for everybody to increase the quality of life of citizens and for all. So with no more ado, thank you so much for your patience.
Okay, good morning again. I cannot speak at the speed that Ramon was using and saying so many things that. But I think we all get the image about the value and the strength of the data that we can use to deal with the issues that we have interest, and of course all of them need quite a lot of thinking over this data that we have seen in a very fast way. But now, we have a very distinguished panel to try to move it down a little bit about how to execute this thing. Now, I will say that in general, we will all agree that we have to work into this transition of in Barcelona to be more knowledge-based, more green or sustainable, digital, social and prosperous city. And not just city, metropolitan area. Let me emphasize this thing again, because it's important. So we may have a strategy, perhaps we can improve it, we can keep discussing, we can generate a shared project, but I think that mostly we have an issue of what to do now to advance it and how to execute this thing. It's not that much about the discussion of the vision, but on the execution. Now, for this thing, just very short point, I think we need to recognize and visualize, and that's what we have been seeing here, and we can do by analyzing this data, the values of the city, the legacies that we have, what do we have, the different points, but we have to tie the dots. That's the effort that we have to make. But we do have an important base, but we need to make the right choices. And for this, I think we need to make the effort in having an ambitious and brave public leadership. I think we need to recover a visionary, ambitious view of this metropolitan area, and now is the moment, not just because there are election coming, which I hope this is part of the debate, but also because the global challenges that we are facing, all the green plans and digital transformation and recovery funds from Europe. All the stars are kind of going. Now is the moment of really use all this push into the right direction for an important transformation in the metropolitan area. But to do this thing, we need this leadership, but I think we also need to recover the trust, consensus, to realize these new public-private collaborations. It is true that the city have also a tradition of these collaborations, but it's also true that the complexity of the new collaborations make it that we need a more broad, relational ecosystem types of collaboration. And we need the confluence of everybody, and that has been, I think, made clear by Ramon, and that's why we are getting not just the people in the panel, but the ones that are sitting here. and that we hope we can, open up this conversation. Today, very little, but keep this conversation alive for the good of Barcelona. No? Now, but to do these things, so, we need the leadership, we need these new forms of collaboration, and that require, I think, a pretty innovative new governance. No? We need to do something that I was saying is more open, relational, inclusive, focusing on the vision, and this focus, by the way, was also highlighted in other aspects for what Ramon said. Are we all for this? I mean, are we open to move in this direction? Well, we'll see what they have to say, this distinguished panel. I'm going to just mention very few things, because I could spend the whole morning talking about the contributions of the people that we have into this panel. But anyway, in the order that they will be talking now, Andreu Mascolell, I should say honorable, no? Andreu Mascolell, now he's a president of Barcelona Institute of Science and Technology. He has been a professor of economics in the Harvard Business School and UPS, founder of the university at IESE, also a former Minister of Economy and Knowledge, o conseller d'Economia i Indústria a la Generalitat de Catalunya. Then, second, we will have Miquel Barceló, member of the 22 AD and the Global Institute of Innovation Districts. He has been president and partner of InnoPro Consulting, and he's the director of the Master of Business Innovation at the University of Barcelona. It's clear his contribution in terms of innovation districts, and that's the topic that he will do. Well, by the way, Andreu will be more focusing in R&D and innovation. And third, Roberto Gili is CEO of Fractalia Innovation Hubs. He's a member of the board of director of Stage 2, and he is part of the IESE Tech Factory Advisory Board. No? And he will be focusing in emerging ecosystems. And last but not least, Maria Galindo, is now board member of the Climate Neutral Smart Cities Mission at the European Commission. She also have a large trajectory, mostly in the public sector, but also in the private with some consulting. She has worked as a general director, I imagine, of the Digital Nation and the Urban Agenda, la Generalitat de Catalunya. He has been a partner and director of the International Smart City Business at Dotsa Consulting. And first, when she was in the Barcelona City Hall, she was the first director of BIT Habitat and kind of founded the BIT Habitat. And I imagine she will focus more on the public side and the social content of this thing. And without more things, thanks for sharing this thing with us. Andreu?
Thank you very much. Very glad to be here. Congratulations, Ramon. That was a brilliant presentation. You may have noticed that he has an aesthetic feeling. This is one of my favorite sculptures in Barcelona. But you may have noticed his analytical power, but I want to remark also the intellectual courage. I kept thinking during his talk, will he or won't he compare Barcelona and Madrid? And he did. Commentators can do two things. If they are a specialist in the area, they nitpick. If they are not a specialist in the area, they have to do general commentaries, which are, in comparison, are going to seem pedestrian. So I take the pedestrian way. And what I will do, having been in politics and learning that messages have to be repeated, I am going to recycle the presentation that we, and I will say fully we are, made 2 years ago at the first React, where we wrote a little piece with Pep Martorell from the BSc and Jordi Camí on a limited topic, which, however, also leads to a little atlas, and which I am certainly curious to understand someday how it fits with all the theoretical developments that Ramon has mentioned to us. And the issue was on the location of research, to avoid the word cluster, etc. We use the word nucleus. So I will say nucleus. So the nucleus of research. And when I mean research, now understand that, comparatively speaking, I am referring to hardcore research. So the kind of research that is not close to the market. As we get close to the market, there are specific issues. The logics keep changing, so this is research. And maybe I will mention the final thesis, because I only have 10 minutes. The final thesis is you need, in a geographical area, let's say the metropolitan area of Barcelona, the presence of nucleus of research. The whole system demands that you have these places where brains are exercised. That said, when you think on location, the hypothesis is the maximum efficiency is obtained by attending to the internal logic of research. And the conclusion is, if you are a policymaker, you should not use nucleus of research to balance neighborhoods or to open up new areas, etc. The logic of research is, if you have 8 or 9 nucleus of research in the city, reinforce these 8 or 9 nucleus of research and don't play with, now there is a new initiative, we are going to place it in a place where there won't be interaction with other immediate interaction, short-round interaction with other research, but nuclearize into make bigger what there is. And the logic of it, the justifications are 3 overlapping. One is research needs physical infrastructures, and those physical infrastructures for efficiency require volume and require scale. And so you cannot have a huge supercomputer at every nucleus, so you cannot have this. So this is one reason. Historically, that's the reason why nucleus emerged historically. So universities could be described from the very beginning as a bunch of scholars grouping themselves around the library being the infrastructure. And these days, the libraries are not so important, but linear accelerators have not yet been virtualized. Atoms have to physically heat, so that's one. Related to that is connectivity, and that not just internet or digital connectivity, also electrical connectivity. That's very clear in the case of the supercomputer. You need a specific electrical power availability to power a nucleus of research. You cannot disperse that through the city in an indiscriminate way. And the third, and perhaps most important, is research is open doors, is interaction, and short-round human interaction will remain as a source of creativity, and the Bostons and the Berkeleys, etc., of this world are proof enough. And it's an interaction which is very short-round. I'm seeing it these days. I'm involved with the Mercat del Peix, etc. Well, there is an issue, and you say, well, everything will be closed. Well, I have already heard some people in the PRBB saying, well, what you are doing is very far, is in the other side of a highway and of railroad tracks. It's 200 meters. And, so we'll see if it works. And if there is enough of this short-round interaction. Well, given that reason, that's our recommendation. And we did our little atlas, which I'm going to read very quickly. And there are points of context with the atlas that has been described by Ramon. And with that, I will finish. I just read it very, very quickly. It's the metropolitan area. And you will notice that the atlas develops, the nucleus developed around universities or hospitals historically. And I don't know what exactly the implications of that. And historically, they go from the central Barcelona, they extend in Barcelona, they extend in the metropolitan area, and perhaps 50 years from now, we'll see it extended beyond the metropolitan area. I also think that I have talked about the logic of research versus, let me say versus in this case, the logic of things which are more market-oriented, the innovation, startups end up in factories, industry, etc. And the logical location of that is spreading from these centers. I see more of these emphasis in the metropolitan area, more in the second metropolitan area. Those need more space. Density is not so crucial. The more closer to the market, the more walls you have to build, because there are secrets of the commerce. So there is an evolution of the logics. Anyhow, the 11 areas, it's 12. From 2 years ago, there has already been a change. Things move. First, Plaça Universitat Raval. Second, Ciutadella, remember it's geographic. Third, the Clinic Escola Industrial, and that's the one I cross. I think the decision has been made to move it to an existing nucleus, so I take that out. Then Sant Pau, Vall d'Hebron Mundet, Diagonal Pedralbes, and then all this is in Barcelona, and then historically we move outside the city, UAB Alba, Bellvitge, Can Ruti. Exceptionally, we come back to Barcelona, 22 Arroba, Campus de la Mediterrània, Diagonal Besòs. So I ended up here. I think I have taken my 10 minutes.
Andreu, Miquel?
Okay, thanks to IESE and Research Center, PPP, for that invitation to have the opportunity to think about the future of the city as innovation ecosystem based on some ideas developed by Ramon Gras. Thanks, Ramon, for giving such amount of data. We will spend some years digesting all this data you provide. I will talk about innovation districts, like Ramon. From my practical experience in projects in Spain and Latin America, and from some research shared with institutions like 22 Network and the Global Institute of Innovation Districts, also with my collaboration with experts like Ramon and Robert Gilli, among others. I will divide my intervention. I will propose you a sort of journey. I will divide my intervention starting with the 22 district. Then I will propose you some lessons from that experience, from that practical experience. And then I will propose, I will describe the current model of innovation district that is being developed all over the world right now. Finally, I will make some conclusion remarks. 1999, more than 20 years ago, a public debate took place in Barcelona City Council, developing a new urban plan, basically transforming the old industrial area of Poblenou into residential. A group of professionals react presenting an alternative based on a study of 20 cities worldwide that were basing their economic future on knowledge and on innovation. Finally, the mayor, Joan Clos, accepted it and started the design process from year 2000. The year 2000 started the process of creating 22 AD. I have summed up 2 intensive years in half a minute, but I will go on. The most relevant factors, I would say success factors of the process, the most important is to move from an urban planning based on zoning to an urban planning based on mix of uses. This was the first statement. And the most important, an urban planning modifying the general plan of metropolitan area, new uses, high densities, equilibrium between the public interest and the real estate investment. Must be an equilibrium. And this, if there is no this equilibrium, it doesn't work. So we must make we must modify the urban planning in terms of keeping the system, of increasing the incentive for real estate investment, but at the same time, keeping the public interest. So we define a new code for the new economy activities based on knowledge from 22A, industrial activities, to 22 at, this is the origin of this funny name, 22 at knowledge-based economy. Everybody knows 22 at, but very few people know 7 at. What is 7 at? Does anybody know 7 at? 7 at is really very important. 7 at is to reserve 10% of the soil for knowledge activities. And this is built for the urban planning. Why 7 at? Because 7 is public facilities, it's public services. So from public services to public knowledge activities, research centers, universities, so on. So we create 20 hectares to provide, to invite universities, to invite research centers to move to the 22 at. Green areas, public residential, infrastructures, public space, based on public-private partnership. The infrastructures project is 180 million euros, 90% paid by the private, keeping the incentive for the private interest. So that's a success story. But let me say from the actual perspective, some factors to correct or to take into account. Actually, some failures that happened during this journey and some learning process, some lessons from what happens in the world during those 20 years. That happens many things, many experiences there are in the world. So the first, I would say, failure or lessons to take is the critical factor of governance. Sometimes governance is critical for the success of an innovation district. And without governance, there is no PPP, there is no public-private partnership. So somewhere, 10 years ago, the governance of the district were lost. If you want the debate, you can say, well, it's a longer story. Then it was lost also a critical factor of 7-Ad. In the first period, we invite many universities. In this space, there were not universities. Now there are 5 universities, 10 research centers, private and public, 25 university students, and so on. And this was because of providing the 7-Ad space. And we didn't take into account the gentrification phenomena. Now the floods in Poblenou are the more expensive in Barcelona. And normally people going there cannot live in Poblenou. Going there to work, cannot live in there. Then I will speak what we are doing now in other projects. Some lessons, we define a mix of uses where there were 10% of residential. The experience said that we mistook. And in the actual projects, we propose 40-30-30, 40 economic activity, 30 different types of residential. We have to innovate in residential. I call it communitary residential, co-living, residential, things like that, to be able to attract talent, international talent. This is one lesson we learned. And then in those 20 years, we saw that the innovation ecosystem had reached highly enriched and win complexity. So we have to enrich this. I think you, Roberto, are going to speak about that. Which is the actual model that is being applied in the world? No, things have changed. New conditions as climate change, new energy model, mobility change, globalization, technology change. So that gives us the necessity to change the model. And the main elements of the actual model that is being applied to many cities in the world is an ecosystem. So it's a system, is made by different elements interrelated in the phase of design and in the phase of implementation. The first one is a new urban planning, as I mentioned. The second one is economic strategy based on a smart specialization strategy, not just the RIS3. There are different methodologies to define the right economic strategy. A specialization, a knowledge base that research centers, technology centers, universities. That doesn't mean that the research centers have to move to the innovation district, as Dr. Masculel said. But the relation must be established between the economy, the companies, and the research centers, and we have to manage this. No? Then a social subsystem to compensate the gentrification phenomena, city lab, public housing, connection with the educational system, and a governance subsystem to assure the management capacity and the PPP. A few words on the economic and socioeconomic impact. Following Enrico Moretti and the new geography of jobs, Enrico Moretti says that the multiplier effect between a high-tech job and a service job is 1 to 5. That's what Dr. Moretti says. In our projects in Latin, socioeconomic, Latin, Spanish, Latin American society, we apply the 1 to 2. So for every, he says high-tech, I prefer to say high knowledge, intensive knowledge job, is demanding services. So when you want to estimate the socioeconomic effect in terms of jobs, we say that if we can attract one talented people, in fact, we are creating 3 new jobs, and that's very relevant and that's very important. So in Besós area, we are able to transform 50 hectares. That may be in 10 years, 10 new jobs, new qualified jobs. Actually, what we are promoting is 30 jobs, and in the Besós area, 30 new jobs in 10 years is very, very important. You are transforming social, economically, and urban area in that case. We make a study estimating what could represent in terms of real estate investment to transform just 1% of the industrial soil in Spain. And we estimated that it is a new real estate investment about 40 billions, 40 American billions, 40,000 million. That is relevant. So we can try just 1% of the actual industrial ground or soil. Some conclusions. First of all, governance is a very critical factor, and we know it with different cases. The right solution of how we implement governance is not always the same, must not be the same. It depends on the cultural and the historical city. And I know many cities, some cases a foundation, some cases an association, in some cases a public-private society. But what is very important is to integrate the quadruple helix, to foster the PPP, and to be able to develop 3 functions: leadership, participation, and management capacity. And that's it. We must take into account that the governments need to be accomplished in different levels, not only in the institutional levels, but in the cluster level, in the organization of activities level, in different levels. So governance is a complex function that must be designed and must be managed. And well, some final remarks. First of all, the future of cities depends on their capacity to promote, develop, and manage urban innovation ecosystems, like the innovation districts that are developed now in many cities in the world. Actually, 22at is a global reference right now, and you Ramon know it. You can go any city in the world, and they know what is 22at. They don't know the origin of the name, but they know what is 22at. And then second, the future of the Barcelona, not just the metropolitan area, the city of 5 million, the region metropolitan Barcelona, will depend on the capacity to develop, in my opinion, localized idea, as Ramon said, and Besós area is a privileged place. Also, Baix Llobregat, also a very powerful place that is the triangle Sant Cugat, Cerdanyola, Rubí, that has a strong potential because those three cities are very complementary. What we need is to make a project integrating that, and the actual logic of going municipality by municipality is not the most effective one. And some of the 10 in the area metropolitana, there are 10,000 hectares. 1/3 of these hectares are in a process of decaying, in decaying process. No investment, no private investment, no public investment. There is a great opportunity to create such innovation ecosystem in the future in the metropolitan area. Thank you, and we can expand on some aspects during the debate.
Okay. Thank you,
My turn.
Roberto.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to IESE for inviting me. I'm really proud to be here today, side by side with first-class actors of the innovation ecosystem. I've prepared a pitch. I think that will be a very prosaic pitch in comparison with Ramon Gras' lecture, but I will go on with trying to explain a little bit, which is the entourage regarding ecosystems. No? I have my questionable authority to talk about innovation ecosystems has its baseline in the fact that I participated actively in the creation of Stage 2, as Jean-Enrique has explained. And Stage 2 is an industrial tech accelerator program, first in its kind for industrial tech focus in Spain. And I remark the fact that it's industrial tech. And recently, I have been co-leading the creation of a platform called Fractalia that aims to be a one-stop shop for the design and implementation of spaces where innovation happens, from urbanism and architecture to designing and managing innovation spaces. But when we talk about innovation ecosystems, and that's the point of my pitch, what do we mean? How can we establish a perimeter? And I remember a recent lecture of Ramon Gras, I was there, Ramon, where he asked the attendants just at the beginning, in a provocative way, how many innovation hubs do you think we have in Barcelona? I have to confess that I said 3, other people said 4, someone said 5, and the answer for Ramon was none. You will explain a little bit about that later, no? But as a consequence, when they invited me to talk about innovation ecosystems, I felt a little bit concerned. It's true that when we talk about innovation spaces, sometimes we mix concepts such as districts, ecosystems, clusters, hubs, and so on. In this sense, I think that the book that Miquel Barceló will publish in a few weeks, Innovation Districts, clarifies a lot of all of these concepts. No? So in the end, I decided to play safe and ask ChatGPT, how can we define an innovation ecosystem? And I will just quote the summary because it would take forever to go through the whole text. And the definition is the following. It's a dynamic and collaborative community promoting innovation and entrepreneurship by helping entrepreneurs and startups in order to successfully develop and escalate their projects. Full stop. I consider the definition very interesting as it indicates a goal to create successful startups. All the actions related have to go in this direction. It can be criticized, but I acknowledge its value because it identifies startups as detonators of value creation. Once we have a definition, I think that's worth applying a criterion based upon the trigger or cause that ignites the process of creation of an innovation ecosystem. And with this standard, I would consider 3. First one, top-down ecosystems, originated by initiative and led by the public administration, usually with some complicities of private institutions or corporations, and with a well-defined playbook to be implemented. This will be the case of Barcelona's biotechnology ecosystem, promoted and led at its start by Professor Mascolell. Basically, as most of you already know, the Big Bang starts around 2006 with the creation of BioCat, organization that coordinates and promotes the life sciences in Catalonia and brings together representatives of all the sectors related. It's true that the project didn't start from scratch, but it required an ignite moment, and it was made with great success. I would say that this kind of initiative requires a certain degree of sectorial specialization and critical mass to concentrate and optimize resources. The second modality of innovation ecosystem would be bottom-up ecosystems, such as the consolidated digital ecosystem that we have in Barcelona area, with reference companies like Glovo, Travelperk, Signatory, or Wallbox, among others. These outstanding firms are the result of the explosive initiative of entrepreneurs, with the support of a number of facilitators, such as universities, public bodies like Axio and ICF, technology centers, big corporations, etc., venture capital funds. But they have to be there so that the entrepreneurs initiative can succeed. In Barcelona, we did it, and we can be proud of it. This is pure Techstars model, an accelerator created in the year 2006 in Boulder, Colorado, by initiative of Brad Feld, a successful entrepreneur from MIT, and some others, who wanted Boulder, a wonderful place to live in, become a benchmark innovation ecosystem in order to attract external talent so that the system could be fueled, and therefore become an alternative to the East and Western Coast ecosystems like Boston, New York, Bay Area. And in the end, Boulder has reached 5 consolidated clusters. From Boulder Techstars model, and now they have expanded to 13 countries with 30 locations, created more than 2,000 startups, 80% successful, those are their statistics, raised more than $7 billion, and achieved a market capitalization around $25 billion. With these figures, Techstars affirm that an innovation ecosystem can be created anywhere if there are enough committed entrepreneurs and a minimum of facilitator resources. This is always controversial. Which are the minimum facilitator resources? Which is the minimal critical mass? This model could be a good reference for our Stage 2 initiative, an industrial tech acceleration program backed with a venture fund, created from scratch by private investors, and that we would like it to be a trigger for the creation of an industrial tech hub in the right bank of Besor River. The third and last modality of innovation ecosystem could be called middle path, and I will be very short. It would be the result of a formal complicity between the public sector and private institutions, with no prefix sectorial specialization, but with territorial limits and urbanism rules. As a paradigmatic example, we could mention 22@, on which Miquel Barceló has already provided some information, and which is setting a reference for lots of places around the world. In the end, we could say that some sectors, such as digital, design, learning, and audiovisual, are the prevailing ones. This model, with an adjustment to the particularities of each location, can be replicated by means of applying the 4-helix model, a critical mass analytical path, plus an adequate governance model that's very important, as Michael has resolved before. This is the reason for a platform like Fractalia, that it aims to be a one-stop shop for the design and setting up of spaces where innovation happens. And I stop here to meet the agenda and hope we can discuss those issues later. Thank you.
Thanks, Roberto. Maria?
Thank you so much. Well, thank you to IESE and the universities for hosting this conference and this debate. Ramon, gracias. Your conference has been insightful, brilliant, and just like probably want to speak for that because I think we're really in a change of era right now. Okay, we have like the global goals. You cannot hear me?
Yeah.
Is it now? No?
We're here. Aquí sí que se sent.
Sí.
Ah, per allà. Aquí sí.
Did you put it on? Yeah.
Un micro. Sí, li passeu un micro.
On.
Presta.
Yes. Okay, you can
Sitges
hear
tira
me now.
endavant. Ja t'ho explicaré.
He trobat un...
I'll start again because I was saying that I found Mr. Ramon Gras' conference very insightful and brilliant in a way that I think that we must realize that we're in a change of era, that we're in the data era, and that right now we must rely very much on the data, on the available data, as to project and set up the vision for the future of our cities, and specifically for the case of Barcelona, as we've just seen. We're in a very complex place right now, I think, for urban development, for city development, for economic development. We're facing like the biggest challenges we can imagine. This week, we're celebrating World Water Week. And we're also seeing the results of the last IPCC study that the United Nations released. And I think that we're very concerned of the global challenges that we're facing. We need to lean towards net zero, more sustainable, more logic way of producing. We need to ensure that the digital transition is going to be fair and just and inclusive. And at the same time, as cities, we need to state what are the short-term local goals and how we're going to localize in our cities these global challenges and these global goals. So it's not easy, but there's some aspects and some ingredients that cities like Barcelona have in place. I think that most of the things that have been said here today, and we all agree that Barcelona has the different aspects to really face these challenges that we're facing globally, but we need to go one step further. Now, cities currently represent 60% of global population. In Europe, it's 75% of global population that live in cities. Cities are the ones that are producing the most CO2 emissions, almost like 2/3. And 60% of global energy consumption comes from cities. So we have to also include all those elements in the way we define what's going to be our proposition, our city proposition for the economy, for the innovation ecosystems, and also for the society and for the people. And I think that even though Barcelona has the different elements, and this is what has brought very much Barcelona and what has brought traditionally Barcelona to be a successful city and a renowned city worldwide, Barcelona is located on the top numbers of the international rankings on competitiveness, on attractiveness, on talent, on startup creation, on innovation ecosystems. 22@ is well an internationally known example of how to bring innovation into the city and into traditional industrial areas. But we still need to go one step further. We cannot face the challenges of the future, and we're talking about a vision for Barcelona's future by doing the same thing that we were doing long ago. So it all relates, and I completely agree with what has been said here, to the governance model, the capacity of bringing the different elements together, and how do we improve and engage and empower each of the elements to thrive by themselves, and also to bring in the people and the citizens into the equation, right? 10 years ago, I was very honored to be working at the Barcelona City Council, and we were presenting together with Professor Joan-Enric Ricard and with other colleagues from IESE an application for Barcelona and IESE to host the PPP for cities as a center of excellence of United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. And what they liked the most of this application was exactly that, the capacity of Barcelona of bringing together and combining the different dots as to thrive. Barcelona at the time was putting up the first or second plan for being a smart city. And there were three elements that we called like the successful points for Barcelona to become that smart city. The first one was a vision. And we're talking about the vision here, and I think that we've been sharing a vision, but Mr. Grass' conference was setting up like the different elements for the vision. I think that in 3 months' time, we have elections coming, and I think that your conference should be like on the table of each of the candidates that is going to run for elections. We need a vision, and we need to share this vision, because this is the ultimate thing that you need to do in order to align everyone's objectives so that everyone can relate to what is going to do to benefit not just oneself, which is very licit, but also the city, and ultimately help the city in achieving these long-term visions. And for Barcelona, as the 2030 commissioner was saying before, it's to reach climate neutrality in 2050, but doing this in a race to net zero by 2030 as being one of the cities of the mission, the European mission, of which I am part in the European Commission. So having a vision so that everyone can align to the vision. The second is having a plan, and I think that probably the plan here is how do we reinforce these innovation ecosystems and these hubs. Okay, there's 0 innovation hubs, right, in Barcelona. I know that Mobile World Capital just said that there are like 96 technological hubs from companies, private companies that are locating their hubs in Barcelona. So maybe we should bring those hubs into the equation as well. But how do we plan for these hubs to happen, to attract talent, to retain talent, to build talent? Right now, you know the numbers. In 10 years' time, 70% of the jobs that we're doing today will be non-existent, because there will be new jobs that are new to create. So how do we prepare the talent? How we do prepare from our universities, from our business schools, the talent of the future as to respond to these new needs that will be arising? So talent, innovation, research, and how do we bring that research into the market? Because at the end of the day, we'll want to be competitive so that our businesses and companies can create high quality jobs and generate an opportunity for everyone. And thirdly, and I said a vision, a plan, so this time to like integrate these innovation ecosystems and to build on the areas that Ramon was proposing before. And thirdly, the governance model. We need a renewed governance model that builds on these public-private partnerships. And I know, Professor Joan-Enric, that long ago we were talking about people first PPPs, so putting people as well, but I'll put in there the 5th P, so people first, public-private partnerships that take into also into consideration the place. So we are in Barcelona, and what works here may not work somewhere else, so we need to take into account the idiosyncrasies of our economy and our city as well. And to build on new business models, and technology and digitalization and innovation can really promote that. And we need all these networks. And I think that many ecosystems that are arising right now, alliances, Mobile World Capital, the Barcelona Health Hub is going, I think is thriving in its sector as well. And you were mentioning also like the medical corridor for Barcelona, but also associations like Barcelona Global, the PPP for Cities. all these elements are helping the city in gaining this vision. And perhaps the city of Barcelona, and here you will agree or not with me, but has lost a little bit of this vision, or has been a little bit limited to sharing the vision with the ecosystem in building this vision for the last few years. But I think that these associations, these PPPs, and these elements of the ecosystem are helping in thriving, in making the city thrive, even at times where perhaps the vision for the government is missing or is not at the front pages as it should be. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you to all. In fact, now we should open for questions, but it's already the time for the cocktail to continue the conversations. So I was thinking about changing slightly. Instead of opening, I do want to give at least the opportunity to each one of the panelists to add something, depending on what they have heard before, that they think this kind of a minute of closing for each one of them. And in the closing for my part, just reminding you that this, for us, is the start of a journey that we are going to be making particular workshops in different areas of these ecosystems, and we'll invite again everybody to collaborate and participate in the creation of this vision and in helping the public leadership, which as it was said is extremely important, and try to facilitate this communication that is necessary to build these partnerships. And we even plan to have in around November a kind of a joint conference again. And I hope with more time to really have the debate. But I thought that here it was important to fix these points of start. Okay, and I shut up and.
Just nothing, just have enjoyed the talk, and I'm looking forward to his next talk.
Me too.
Okay.
The same for me, then. Yes.
I shall have a question for Ramon. No, I was just wondering, like in your conference, you were saying that we need to ultimately tend to, I don't know the exact word that you were using, but like to reach the fullest capacity of each of these like ecosystems and areas in the city, as to promote more density, compactness, and to really make sure that the provision of everything is affordable, is effective, is efficient, etc. But that, together with the challenge that more and more people are moving into the cities, and that cities are like reaching higher. So how must cities, or what does city science suggest for cities to do to really balance out the capacity of these ecosystems to reach their full potential, and how to keep providing the services in the city, how not to like, collapse city mobility, how not to collapse even more the housing market and the provision of basic services, etc. Maybe for a city like Barcelona is, well, I don't know. No, I'd like to know your insights.
Absolutely, Maria, and thank you so much for your question and for all the great, brilliant contributions by Professor Andrew Mascolell and Michael and Robert. Regarding your point and linking it with some of the earlier comments that the different panelists that contributed today to the session have made, I would say the following. what we've seen when we evaluated recently in a study. By the way, little marketing moment, we may be publishing a book very soon around September, City Science, Performance Follows Form, so you're all invited to the presentations. We may be presenting it in New York, Boston, London, Paris, most likely Barcelona as well, and Venice, maybe the Biennale di Venezia of architecture. And in that book, among other studies that we've conducted, what we've seen is that there are certain high quality urban design and programming in this mixed use that Miquel Barceló was describing before, that's very relevant, programmatic strategies that allow for people to have easy access to sustenance services, healthcare, education, cultural amenities, etc., within physical proximity. Sometimes people say that that's been already achieved depending on where they live. That's not the case. When we measure that quantitatively, out of the multiple cities and different countries that we evaluated, only 4.5% of the urban subunits that we evaluated do fulfill those high quality requirements. Therefore, more than 95% of them do not fulfill those requirements. What that means is that the way the cities were shaped in terms of the urban design fabric and the programming was quite uneven. It was probably very informal and organic along the way, and that created a number of inefficiencies. That's very relevant. One of the things that we've seen is that it is feasible with a certain degree of critical mass and density, which depends on the population of the municipality, and with certain strategies to really achieve those goals. It is feasible. But if you do it informally and you do not base some of your decisions in data-driven and evidence-based considerations, as you suggested at the beginning of your comment or lecture conversation, it's going to be very hard. I'll just name a few that would enable city leaders, thought leaders, city government, and public companies to achieve that. The first of all would be, attaining the right levels of density, as you said, that's very critical. The second would be that the urban form helps. Miquel said something very important. Mixed-use development is very important. For example, after Miquel led the 22 Arroba, that, as he said, became a worldwide reference as one of the very first innovation districts around the world, and it has been imitated around the world in many respects. It came Boston Seaport, in Boston where I live, right? And Boston Seaport did a great deal of great things, but they committed one major mistake similar to 22 Arroba, is that they devoted space for offices and high value-added activities, which was great to redynamize the environment, but the allocation for housing was too limited. And it became more expensive to live in Boston Seaport than live in the Boston downtown with the financial district that used to be obviously the wealthiest and the most expensive per square footage or square meter in terms of the real estate pricing, right? So that became problematic because the people working there could not afford to live there, right? So they had to live 2 or 3 neighborhoods away or districts, and then the commuting times would increase, the emissions would increase, as Miquel and Robert Gilles were mentioning before, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because with the proper urban design, with the proper density, and with the proper distribution of amenities, we can achieve those goals. And I wanted to make a distinction here. One thing is the widespread urban services and amenities that are more generic and should be more egalitarian. And the other is the knowledge economy hubs that, as Professor Andreu Mascullell said earlier, they should be concentrated. When we evaluate all the multiple industries around the world for services and products, what we say is that the optimal is that the more generic type of economic service that we have, it should be the most widespread. And the most sophisticated, the more refined, the more complex the activity, as Professor Andreu Mascullell said, they need to be physically concentrated. And they need to be creating these hubs in physical relationship, and that links with the governance point of Miquel Barceló and that logic. I'm saying this because of the following. When I made for Robert Gilles' point that provocative question, it was done on purpose because I thought that people would say 3-5 people who know well the city, right? Because they would speak about 22 At, which is the very first innovation district in Barcelona and one of the very first in the world, which has a lot of great attributes, which increased from 36,000 people to over 95,000 people. A fair amount of them in working innovation activities, concentrated in collaboration with UPF, with new universities, IAC, and others. And then we have fantastic universities, public and private, and great research fields in the area. We have a long tradition of industrial revolution and brilliant professionals. The reason why I made that question is because what we have is parts of those ingredients scattered throughout the city, but we don't have a single system that has all the critical ingredients to help it flourish. So the idea is that with a couple of adjustments, 22 Arroba would be even more powerful. With certain considerations for urban redesign, urban regeneration, smart specialization, and a systems logic, the new districts that we're contributing and other city leaders in Barcelona, in Badalona, in Esplugas and others would have all the critical ingredients and dynamics. In other words, what we observe is that very often we have some of these ingredients. This goal is attainable, is achievable. We just need to sometimes combine a holistic vision with some evidence-based considerations, but that would enable to have these consolidated systems that have both the ingredients and dynamics, therefore the multiplying effects, which is what people perceive in the end, would be realized.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you for answering the question. Thank you everybody for participating, for being here, and we hope to count on you for the following, and we can continue the conversation
Jo penso que s'ha acabat, no?
in the cocktail that is going to be in the Q300, 2 floors up, so that we can continue with this thing. When you get out, you'll find that there is a kind of a summary. No, that's not going to be ready. Okay, so thank you very much.